Two people knocked on our door this evening and stepped across the threshold as one of our house guests. They are crossing over from the normal world into our haunted house. Welcome to the Looks Creepy Cool podcast, part of Haunted House Fear Fest. I'm your host, Renee, and tonight I'm joined by Arseniy Klishin and Laura Gray, developers of the video game Cabernet, which is one of the 2025 Haunted House Fear Fest nominees for Best Horror. Together, we'll wander room by room through the house and uncover what makes their game so creepy cool. Let's step inside. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hello.
Of course, I had to have you guys. So, before we kick everything off, so just so you guys know, with our audience, they are the watchers of the house. So, here in this haunted house, I'm going to guide them room by room, guys. So, first, we're going to start off in the creepy kitchen where they talk about their ingredient of fear for the game, the library of shadows where we discuss what inspired our house guests, the mirror room where they reflect on your horror origin story, the basement brief, they reveal industry secrets or lessons, the attic call where they talk about what's pulling them forward, and the final room where every guest ends up is where they share the most creepiest moment and the most coolest moment. Now, they might not make through every room, and that's okay. We always welcome our house guests to come back, but at the end of the day, they always end up in the final room. And before I kick us off in the creepy kitchen, I want to give you a little description about Cabernet. It's a 19th century Eastern European inspired world, but with a modern twist. The protagonist is Liza, a young vampire. I love vampires, navigating her new life among humans and vampire society. So this is so cool. The game is amazing. Obviously, all our judges played it and everything. So we're in the creepy kitchen. I want you guys to tell us more about the game. What's your ingredient of fear of the game, and how did it come about?
Yeah, hand it over to Arseniy, starting with obviously the concept of vampires.
Yeah, I guess that would be an appropriate place to start. We love vampires. This has been an obsession more or less since childhood. Definitely has been on our radar in terms of making a game. We are party friendsters, so we are an emotion-driven studio. So the most important thing for us is to evoke emotions in our players and convey emotions as we feel them and as we would like them to perceive. And with vampires, that's a setting. So we really wanted this to be the case haunting. We really wanted to make one project that's like it. And the only problem was that we didn't have the emotional connection. We had a personal connection because we just really like it, but we couldn't quite get to the point where the project was to exist in kind of our universe. And at some point it clicked. The emotional theme, the fact that alcoholism and addiction can be translated really well into the lore of vampires. And then, it just kind of unfolded and it's very clear that we wanted to do this. And as for the vampires themselves, and I like to tell this story when I was little grandmother who raised me, she was really worried about me because I was so obsessed with them. She was concerned. She was like I'm okay.
Yeah, made it your career somehow.
Oh, wow, that's so like with the game and the different like with vampires, there's indulgence, there's hunger and restraint and all that other stuff. So what was the most difficult flavor, I guess, for the story and for the game? Like, was it the tone, the pacing, or the emotional weight of the game? Like, how did you guys balance everything out? Because we all know with vampires, there are so many dead emotions. So how did you guys balance it all?
Yeah, I think the tone was something that was really important, and that could be really tricky with a vampire game because everybody comes into kind of a vampiric world with their preconceived notions about it, whether it's more literary, whether it's from like TV or other type of media. And for us, we kind of wanted to have a bit of a balance between obviously like the idea that there can be quite indulgent things about it, but at the same time, really kind of dive more into questions about kind of existential questions about eternal life in addition to alcoholism. And those things were really important to us, but we also didn't want it to just like completely drag down the story. We wanted it to be always kind of a through line that was happening, but of course, pepper in some more kind of fun vampiric lore and definitely, be kind of have some entertainment value to it as well, in addition to the heavier themes.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta make it well-rounded, worth it really. But in addition, I guess the 19th century brings another set of expectations, hence the modern twist We wanted it to be an experience that is easy to enjoy and easy to read. And if we write as if people talk in the 19th century dialect, that would have been pretty
Be
difficult.
drier.
Yeah.
So we definitely kind of have a more modern vernacular that we use them.
But it's obviously a balance act because we can, do LOL stuff like that. So
No. No, they can't
Oh.
text message either in the 19th century too. So, before we leave the creepy kitchen, what would be Cabernet's drink or dish of choice, I guess? And what would it taste like?
Well, I guess we have to kind of say the obvious one. It would
Yeah.
be Cabernet, but in our game, Cabernet is not the wine. It is a code word for blood, essentially, but a very specific type of blood that has been processed in a really complicated way that makes it very valuable and quite expensive in the world. So that's where the kind of ethical question comes into is, do you find ways to save up to buy Cabernet, or do you succumb to human, to your vices and to indulge in human blood? So have to say Cabernet.
Wow.
also, in general, the game is a lot about alcoholism as a whole, no matter the drink. And since it's set in Eastern Europe, vodka plays a pretty strong part in all this. So both human characters and vampires indulge into that on occasion, and that may have connotations.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it sure does. And as we move into the Library of Shadows, basically, I mean, you talked a little bit about your grandmother. So, what's your origin of story for horror? Like, where did it come about? Did it start with a movie? Did it start with like a book, like a folklore? I'm always curious on how the developers' twisted minds work as they develop their game.
I mean, I think for me, this was what vampires. It was
Mm.
when I was little, there were some TV shows that were very fundamentally influential to me, and I got the German name for it. That basically a little vampire, and it was this pretty grounded, I guess, vampire show about a kid who makes friends with a family of vampires and become an extra in their vampiric group, and it captivated me, and I never was able to shake it off. So that definitely was my induction.
And mine was slightly different. Definitely books. I'm still to this day, I prefer actually to read horror more so than to watch it, even, although I can enjoy a good horror movie too. So I feel like a lot of kids have that scary stories to tell in the dark. And I just
Hmm.
remember this one image of spoiler alert for the story, like there's a egg sack of spiders and it bursts on her face and it has this very gruesome image in it. And I remember it to this day of being, something pretty traumatizing in a really fun way. And then also for vampires specifically, there was this odd book called In the Forest of the Night that I read when I was very, very young. And it was kind of like, it was for young people, but had a little bit of like sexiness to it. And it was very like vampires, dark underworld. And I love that. So that was
Oh.
definitely my vampire, foray into vampires as a kid.
Nice, nice. So, what do you hope players interpret the meaning behind Cabernet's world? Like, is it more gothic tragedy then, or is it like social allegory? Like, what do you want players to take away from it when they play the game?
It kind of ended up being a pretty expansive universe.
Mm.
There are a lot of elements there. There's folklore, there's personal struggle, and all kinds of stories because every side quest, out of which we have a lot, and the general story kind of carries its own meaning. We have a political aspect to an extent, but again, it kind of is processed through the personal emotions of the person rather than kind of a general landscape of the world. I think ultimately, if the players can get an emotional meaning for themselves, accomplish our task. There are a lot of threads to pull there.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, there's quite a few side characters and side quests that look like over 14. And so in the end, I do think one of kind of the thematic things that, it all culminates in is that essentially even, small actions or interactions that you have with the people that, you surround yourself with, they might not always have the most gigantic repercussions, but they really can impact people's lives and even in a small way. And that's something we wanted to kind of highlight, just,
Yeah.
how your choices and how you choose to navigate this world have repercussions for the people that you interact with.
Yeah. So, that brings me to, like, how do you guys navigate together, like, working together on this game? Like, how long did it take to put together? Like, obviously, I mean, you have to get along with the people you work with, and if you have discussions, like, talk through it and stuff. So, how did you guys work through everything, even the most difficult moments where you might disagree on a particular scene or story or what have you?
I mean, those things definitely happen, those disagreements, and we are married in real life.
Yeah.
So that adds kind of a whole nother layer of,
Yeah.
you kind of, which in some ways is good because you kind of get past the bullshit, for lack of a better word, and you can just kind of dive into, what's actually bothering you. But at the same time, because you know that person so well, sometimes it feels a bit personal.
Yeah.
So I think that was the biggest struggle, was just kind of not taking feedback, especially because it's creative feedback. It does feel very personal. Very, artistic feedback can be really hard. It was a process of navigating it, and we worked over about 5 years on this project, I would say, right, give or take.
With different levels of involvement.
Right, different levels of involvement. So I think throughout those 5 odd years, by the end, we became a little, we were able to become a little less personal, a little, and just honestly respect each other's artistic decisions. So when we took feedback on board, we knew it was coming from a good place in the end.
Also, both producers professionally prior to working on our own games. I guess a lot of this is about processes, kind of finding the ways to communicate and the right, I don't know, up to software. And sometimes it's much better to write something on Discord rather than say it in person when you're like back or something. There are nuances, and I guess it's all about individual quirks and figuring out what's best.
And that's awesome, and you guys are married and thriving, and it worked, and so that's great. And so what's your guys if you tell us, like, your background? I mean, were you always into gaming? And, did you work for big game developers or studios before you got into indie? How did that transcend?
Well, I did. So my whole life I've been working in games basically in various capacities. But the last decade before we started the company, I've been doing production, game production. So I was managing teams. I worked at PlayStation most recently for a number of years, shipped a lot of big titles that I'm quite proud of. But ultimately, I always knew that I wanted to do something creative, which production doesn't always allow. And I really wanted to do my own stories and my own games. And luckily, I have a partner who helps me in that mission.
And I come from actually a theater background, so I was a live art producer, and I still do voice acting and acting in that regard. So, but I was still a producer, so it's really transferable from even the live arts into the video game industry. So I could just kind of dive into it. Obviously, learning new skills because as an indie team, you do everything, and we're both producers. But in the end, I'm the character animator and art director and voiceover actor. He obviously programs and does the writing, and it's just a lot of different hats that are really fun and fulfilling in the end.
Wow. So you guys Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say it's funny how Laura transitioned into all this, and how certain things are very different in the digital sphere than in, say, theater. So, for instance, the deadlines part was very hard to get used to for Laura because in games everything kind of gets pushed all the time. We're always delayed and stuff, and in theater it's basically the opposite. When you book something, it's gotta have to happen. So this was the transition.
Still not on board with it fully. I like my deadlines. I like keeping them,
No,
but
I very much like the world around them.
So how did you guys meet? You come from both different backgrounds. I'm curious.
we met in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the States. So long time ago, I graduated from the University of Pittsburgh. He went to Carnegie Mellon. We met there, and then kind of parallel, we both moved to New York, and then together we moved to London. So we're actually based in the UK now and both British citizens. So we've kind of, our relationship has traversed kind of crazy, I mean, international essentially land.
Wow, that's wow. See, I always love hearing stories like that. So, how do you like for basically for developers creating emotionally complex horror can be challenging. So, what advice would you give people who are like such as yourself, like, how did you get through, like, in the trenches of it? Like, you guys have different opinions on things. Like, how did you push forward, and what advice can you give to other people who might are already experiencing that?
I mean, I think my advice would be, and again, because our studio is about emotion, obviously there's a lot of horror that you can put on top of things, and that's important, but you really have to stay true to kind of your core story and the core themes and what you want to say. And for us, we use the horror to highlight those themes. So if we're ever not sure about where the story should go, we kind of do want to kind of strip back the horror bit a little bit and focus on kind of what are we trying to say and what are the horror themes that will elevate what we're trying to say. I think from a writing perspective, that's what I would say. Do you have anything?
Yeah. I mean, it's in a similar vein because we always make it personal, with like this write and advice, write what you know, but it's not just about writing, it's about the fact that your ultimate message has to come from a place that's important to you. Otherwise, it's not worth it. It's way too difficult to make a game and way too long. And if you're gonna do something just because it's trendy or just because it's the trope that you want to follow, it's just not gonna be worth it. And luckily, Cabernet was a dream project for us. So we made it. It was very tough. It was a very difficult process, but ultimately we made our dream game. And that's just something that we can stand by no matter what happens with like reception or luckily this also went well. And I guess the second part, so Laura mentioned the themes, which is very important, but I'd focus on the moments, individual moments, because if you set out to make a game, let's say about depression, right? It's like you just have this experience with it and you just want to make something in that area. It may not be enough. In my experience, writing is much, much easier if you think about a particular thing that made you feel. And then from there, you can develop into a bigger stage and create the universe. But it starts with like a very strong nugget rather than a general feeling.
Yeah. Wow. So any like secrets you can share, just being like you're from theater and then you were in the gaming world, like any industry secrets, like anything that's like, gosh, like, because from the indie world and then to like mainstream, it's very different. So any, I don't know, terrible experiences you had where you're just like, screw it, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to do what I need to do. And like anything that you can share in this haunted house, or mind you, everything in the house stays in the haunted house unless it's published on a podcast platform.
I think this is I have one because
Yeah.
this is very specific to, I mean, not to us, to everybody. And it doesn't name names. So,
Okay.
so in terms of pitching is really challenging, pitching to publishers and funders for indie people because obviously you want to be funded.
Now more than ever.
Yeah, now more than ever. And we obviously had a lot of advantages being producers ourselves. So we kind of knew how to, set budgets and to present ourselves. But it's not even a secret, but just something that I want everyone to know is that when you're pitching your game, everyone's going to say you don't need to have a finished prototype. You don't have to have, you can put in placeholder art or things like that. And they specifically tell you that. Some people are like, we actually don't want to see a polished product. It's a lie. We've heard that so many times from people. And people are really intelligent in the industry and love what they do. But it's really difficult for anybody to visualize what the actual product is going to be in the end, especially with a game like ours that's so narrative heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember pitching the first time and our art wasn't necessarily, it was okay, but it wasn't like necessarily the finished product. And we got a lot of no's and we're like, what's going on? I mean, obviously it's really hard to get funding, but then we essentially just really polished it. We spent a lot of time just making it exactly how it was going to look. And essentially was the prologue, chapter 1 in our game, essentially how it is right now. That was our prototype that we pitched. So there was really nothing about it being a prototype. It was the final product. And that was the way to get funding.
The second round was very different.
Yeah.
So we got much different response. It's still, I guess the second advice is it's still really difficult. Yeah. Even if you have everything nailed down, it may not line up with the right publisher's schedule. The budget may not be right, which again is another thing publishers don't like to talk about, is the fact that everybody has their own expectations on the budget. And if it's too low or too high, they just would not consider you and you wouldn't know before you pitch. So I guess I think my advice ultimately is make a thing you really want to make, because then you're not going to regret all the time. And rejections are not going to, they're going to feel more personal because of that. They're also going to feel like an obstacle that you can overcome because you're doing it for yourself rather than for somebody else.
And don't believe the nice lie of the prototype. Don't do it.
That is great advice. So we're here still in the basement, but in order for you guys to get up the stairs, we like to do what I call a lightning round. So either both you guys have to answer. So favorite vampire or book?
We have so many actually. So I'm going to say Marceline the Vampire Queen from Adventure Time, just to make it a little lighter, a little less scary, I guess.
I'm not sure the film or book part, though. I guess it's not technically film or book, but I guess I'll also be off the script a little. I say Morbius. I say specifically 90s animated series Spider-Man Morbius.
Gotcha.
The,
Gotcha.
the, the one that has speckles on his hand because they thought that Biden is too scary for children.
Midnight snack, blood or bourbon?
Oh, I mean, in the world of Cabernet, it would have to be blood, but I'm saying bourbon because I love bourbon.
I say blood because bourbon is not my drink.
If you could patch one real life bug out of existence, what would it be?
Real life bug.
Mhm.
Ooh, that's tricky. Just that you have to sleep. I would like to patch out the fact that you need to sleep and that you just would be fully rested always. That's what I would want,
Okay.
especially right now.
And that sounds good to me.
Okay. And last question. You're almost at the top of the stairs. The game you would love to see Cabernet cross over with.
Okay. I'm gonna say this because the games are awesome, but also we are friends with them. I would say any Kill Monday game. So either like Frambo or Little Misfortune. I'm just like in awe of their work, and they're amazing people. I love them.
Well, we have to put it out there in the universe, so you never know. So, the attic call just came on, and one of the things I want to ask you guys is if you could bottle the essence of Cabernet's like legacy, what would you want it to say 10 years from now?
I think we'd want it to be universal still, but I think what universal we would want it to say is that, and I touched upon it a little bit before, that your choices, even if they seem really small and that they're inconsequential, that they can make a difference in the lives of people. And even though our game, has horror themes and, it deals with vampires, that, I mean, making good decisions, so choosing the game can have, a profound impact on the people around you. And that there's always, despite the horrors, a little bit of hope that you can always cling on to.
Yeah, definitely that's number one. I'd say remember that the world is not one scale. It's not like all bad or all good. There's a lot of intersection for nihilism and humanity, and will make you make better decisions.
That's perfect. That's perfect. So, how has the player community responded? What type of feedback have you got from people playing your game and everything?
Honestly, it's been really positive and lovely, and we love our community. Obviously, it's a bit of everyone because of the genre, but we actually found quite a niche and kind of the cozy gamer community, which wasn't necessarily what we were expecting, but it's so lovely to be a part of that. And there's a lot of, especially me being a female gamer myself, there's a lot of female gamers who've really enjoyed it, and we've got a lot of great. And the LGBTQ plus community has also been super receptive, and that's something that really makes it's lovely to us that a lot of people feel welcome and have found a piece of them or something to relate to in it.
That's awesome. That's so great. Oh my gosh. Well, we're nearing towards the end of the interview and the end of the tour, and we reached the final door. So, each of you, I want you to let the watchers of the house know what is the creepiest thing that's happened to you and what's the coolest thing that's happened to you.
Sure. So I'll try to combine them in a way, uh, and I guess as every compromise is not quite creepy and it's not quite that cool, but hopefully it will work out. So when I was 4, around the same time, I think when I started to get into vampire, that's unrelated, I saw a UFO, and I mean, I'm happy to take all the licks that come with it, but I stand by it. This was a UFO. And I remember that day very well. Again, this was with my grandmother, and I ran to her to tell about this to the kitchen, and she asked me if I took a picture because that would have been great. And I tried to fabricate evidence for this. So like I drew a picture of a UFO and I tried to show it to people because I knew that it justified the cause. You know, I knew that it's true. So I tried to convince people, even though the methods were corrupt. So this was my story.
It's an important story for you. I love
Yeah.
it. And for me, it might sound generic, but I'd say the creepiest thing is I really liked horror quite young. And so I would always go to haunted houses with my father every year when I was quite little. And I remember like these people being like skewered with stakes through their bodies. Like I'll just still remember it to this day. So the haunted house, Terrors by the Lake, that was definitely the creepiest thing, but I loved it every single year. And a cool thing, we'll just say something that happened recently. It's us, but it feels like it's for both of us. But I just won an award for making Cabernet. So that was something that was really cool that happened last week. So I won a Creative Impact Award for develop in the UK for creative impact as a woman. So yeah, it was really nice.
That is so cool. That's awesome. Wow. Well, you guys are doing cool things. So are we expecting like any other games to come from you guys anytime soon or?
We are expecting a game.
I mean, it's public a little bit, right?
It's public. We are working on a game.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's public that it is going to be a horror narrative RPG. We're not revealing the details just yet.
We are planning on it being a little creepier than Cabernet. A little bit more traditional horror. That is the goal right now. But that's all we can say.
Wow. Well, I'm excited. And just so you guys know, so everyone, our Steam page for Haunted House Fear Fest is up until the 19th, but we will have other tempos. The houses all bring year round. October is our big one, but we have the Frozen Wing coming up in early 2026. We have the Heat Wave, and then there's like the other tempo for October. So if you guys are gamers and you guys too, Party for Introverts, so if you enter in the Frozen Wing or the Heat Wave, and you get selected, it already automatically carries over to October. So you don't have to like pay again, submit again. So it's really great and so happy to have you guys on the podcast in the festival. Guys, I will put links below to their game, anything that they want me to share with you guys. And Cabernet really is creepy cool, and it definitely followed the fear to Haunted House Fear Fest. We're super happy to have the game and them in. Guys, check them out, play the game, follow them on all their social handles. It's truly amazing. Thank you so much. And Arseniy and Laura, you have a great night.
Want more chills and chatter? We're streaming on all podcast platforms.